Hi! In today's video, we're going to look into network variables. So we're going to use network variables to actually create a first little puzzle where there's going to be two switches and a door, and both players are going to need to step on the switch for the door to open. Let's get started! Now let's talk about network prefab. Network prefab are basically prefab, normal prefab that you would know and use in your game. It's just that they have a network object on them. So the network object kind of register them with the whole networking framework, and it allows it to have RPC calls, have network variable, and it needs to be paired with a script that has a network behavior. So these two things goes together. So once you have in your scene a network object that has a network behavior and you drag and drop it to create a prefab, it's going to create a network prefab. And then, if you use a network object and it doesn't have a network, if you create a script that is a network behavior and you attach it to a Gameobject that doesn't have a network object, that network object is going to be automatically added because they really need to go, they really go hand in hand together. The network behavior that allows you to actually store inside, write RPC calls, and also it contains network variables. The network variables are basically the data that allows you to sync some data between your clients. And the RPC call, we already used them in other videos. They basically allow you to either from the client call and execute something on the server, or from the server execute something on one or all the client. So this is basically like a little graph to explain to you like all things and how they are contained. So a network prefab is something that has it's a game object that has a network object. A network object has one or multiple scripts that have network behaviors, and each network behaviors can have its own network variable and RPC calls. So I hope that this little like kind of a recap explained to you and help you understand exactly how those things kind of relate to one another. Let's talk a little bit more about network variables. So network variable are a thing that we've used a little bit in our client prediction video, but we're gonna go a little bit more in depth on what they do. So as I've already said, and you already know probably, these are used to synchronize data across your different players. But they have some general requirements that are needed for it to work. So one of it has already been met by some of you I've seen in the Discord, is this one. A network variable assign type must be constrained to an unmanaged type. An unmanaged type means that it's a type that cannot be null. It cannot have a null value. It always have a default value. Okay, so let's go in here for Microsoft documentation of C# for the unmanaged type. So you can read it here. So it's mostly all the number type. The enum type can also be used without any problem. The pointer type, which we don't use really in Unity. And then this one, which we use mostly, any user-defined struct type that contain fields of unmanaged type only. So those are fields that are either enum or any of those number, char, bool type. So as long as you have you define something that has those basic types, you're going to be able to use this with a network variable without any problem. So if you have some that don't have that, so let's say we wanted to send the vector tree, the rotation and stuff like that when we did the movement for the player, then we used this, the iNetwork serialization. So this allows you to specify that your custom struct inherits from iNetwork serializable, which forces you to implement this one, which is like it basically means like in here you explain to the serializer how to serialize and unserialize your variable. Another important part of the network variables is that they have permissions. Okay, so different variable type, we're gonna have different permission. Usually we don't really specify them, and they have a default for that. They have a default. If you don't specify it, the server can write to it and any client can read it. So it's really server authoritative, like it for the most of the netcode for Gameobject is like that anyway. So it's server iterative. Only the server can write and the clients can read. So that means that if you want to modify the value of a network variable, you need to call the server. Okay, this is always true. And then they have here a great example of different type of variable that you could have, and actually like example of why you would want to use maybe let's say the server only the owner can read or write or something like that. It depends on really like what that variable is going to be used for. So I encourage you to kind of go read this, the permission example in their documentation. It has a lot of great information. Okay, so now in this video, we're going to see a little bit more anyway how you use it in a real case when we're going to do the switch to open the door. So, okay, so I just wanted to kind of look at the documentation with you so that you know where to look at if you needed more information. All right, so let's take a look at the changes we did on the blue scene. So basically what we did was we made it larger by duplicating the tile, the floor tile. We created those switches here, which are just Gameobject with a cylinder here and another cylinder here, which we're removing the component. Let me apply that. So we're keeping only one collider on the top that is set to a trigger. So that way, whenever the player goes on it, we can trigger the switch, turn it on to make it active. So yeah, there's two switches. So switch, cylinder, cylinder, the cylinder. I just put a material on this one, and then that completes the switch for now. We're gonna add the script here later. Then I did a wall here that I put in here and a door in the middle. The door as an animator, I can show you. So it's a pretty simple animator with two parameters that are trigger parameters. So you can go here and trigger. One is open door, close door. So with the entry here, I've put an empty state here since when we start the game, there's nothing really to do for the animator. But when we trigger here, made a transition from here to the open animation. The transition here runs when the open door trigger is called. And on open, you can transition to the close animation with the closed door. And then from the closed door, you can come back to the open one with the open one. So it's pretty simple. So I put the animator in here, and if we look into the animation, so if you don't have that window, you can go into window, animation, animation, and then to kind of see this, you have to click the game object that has an animator. Then you're going to be able to create some animation. I created two. So the first one is the open one where the door starts there and then opens up here. That's where it finishes. So that's pretty simple, just a Y. And the close is just the opposite. So it starts up and then it goes down. So yeah, I'm not going to teach you how to do this in this tutorial since we're really focusing more on multiplayer. But you can find that information elsewhere for now on YouTube. So yeah, that's mostly it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some script on the switch so that when both switches are active, the door opens. So we're also going to put on a script on the door that's going to listen to both the switches. Okay, so in the game folder, we'll start by creating a new script that we'll call switch. And that switch is going to be what we attach to the switch game object we have in the scene. So let's start and make it a network behavior. There we go. So whenever the player triggers this, we want the switch to become active. So let's go with the untrigger enter first, and then an untrigger exit. What we're gonna do here is, so that's a flow of an object that is owned by the server. We need to tell the server that someone collided with us. Okay. Right now, we're not going to go into like testing if that's a player and everything. You guys already know how to do this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a server RPC that's going to receive that information and update a local variable, network variable, sorry. So let's go here and say void private void, and then we go with on switch activated, on switch, let's say changed, yeah, server RPC. So what this takes is a boolean that tells us if it's active or not, like this, sorry, and yeah, so it's like this and then like this. Okay, so this needs to be a server RPC like this. So we remember that server RPC, for it in order to work, it needs to have a function name that ends in server RPC also. So that's fine. So this is going to be executed by the server. So what we need is a variable for us to store that information in. So what we're going to do, we're going to do private network variable. We need a bool, which is a non-managed type, so we can use that here. Is active, and it's equal to this. Right now, we want the basic permissions. So that permission means that this is going to be owned by the server, and we can read it only. So on trigger enter, what we're going to do here is simple. We're going to call the on switch. We can say like yeah. You know what? Right now we could handle the fact that if we're the server, then we don't need to call the RPC. We can just change the variable ourselves. But you know what? For simplicity, right now we're gonna make that extra call. We're gonna say true here. But technically, if you were the server, you don't need to do this because you have the right to modify that variable directly. So you wouldn't need to call the RPC, but we can still do it. And here it's basically the same thing, but we tell it that it's false. Okay, so now this is a basic flow that you're going to see a lot. So in here it received the RPC. It can just say isActive.value equal isActive. And here we go. So that's the whole like basic flow of it. There's something to happen. We tell the server modify a network variable. But then that network variable, we kind of need to know whenever it changed. So what we're going to do is on network spawn, we're going to do, we're going to listen to those changes. So is active the on value change plus equal, and we're going to add our own on value change. So was active, and here let's say is active. And then if is active, then we, for now, just want to do a debug log. So debug.log is active, and else debug.log is not active. And there we go. That's mostly everything we need for right now for this thing to work. So we're going to attach it to the switch and test it out. Back in our Unity scene, what we want to do is go in our prefab folder, take the switch prefab and add it the switch script. Now, as I said previously, when showing how the network object and their network behavior are connected, it's going to ask you. It's going to say switch does not have a network component. Would you like to add one? But it's because network behavior requires a network object. So we're going to say yes. We could have added ourselves the network object and then after that added our script, but I wanted to show you guys that Unity really requires it. So here we go. We had our switch script. So that means we've done this on the prefab. So these two have the switch script now. So let's go and test this out. We're going to go in the scene, init, back to init, and we're going to start this. So now what we should see here is we should see the activated, deactivated whenever we step and on and off the switch. So here we go. Here I am. I'm going to clear that console, and then I'm going to go on it. Active, inactive. So right now, that means the state is getting sent to the server. Oh, I stepped on the other switch. That state is getting sent to the server, and the state is getting replicated. So when we have two player, both switches are going to be synced. So that's fine. Now, what we want is whenever both the switches are pressed, we want that door to open. So we're going to go and start to do a door script. All right, now let's start our door script. So in game folder class, let's call it door. So the door, basically what it's going to be is it's going to be also a network behavior, and it's going to have a list of switches. So let's go here, serialize fill, private, and let's go with an array, switch and switches. There we go. So we have that. So you know what? No, I'm gonna switch it to a list. I just prefer lists of switch that are switches. So we're just gonna import the system collection generic. Here we go. So now that we have that, we also need a reference to what we added with. It's gonna be a network animator. Anim controller. So a network animator is a component that allows us to kind of sync the animator between all the clients that are in the scene. So that's going to be pretty useful because when the door opens, we want it to open on everybody's computer. So we need also a dictionary here. There are probably other ways to do that, but that's my way to do it. I just want to keep track of because our door doesn't require only a switch, it can be multiple switches. So I got to keep the door got to keep a state of which switch is active and which isn't, and then every time a switch change state, we're going to check are all the switches active. If all the switches are active, then we're going to open. So switches equals new dictionary, just like that. So that's going to be perfect. Now on network spawn, we're going to, network spawn, not despawn, network spawn. We're going to want to initialize that array. This is something that should only happen on the server. So we're going to check if we're the server. There we go. If we are the server, we're going to do switches. We're going to do a for each for the switches. So that's basically what it is. And since switch is kind of a reserved keyword, we can name our variables switch. So that's what that's why it added the ampersand before. So we're going to say door switch, just like that. And what we want to do, we want to say active switch dot add. We're going to add to the dictionary the door switch that was linked, and we're going to initialize it to false. So that's going to be done only on the server because really the door code is only going to really be executed on the server because we don't want to do all this check because it's server authoritative. Only the server knows when all the switches have been pressed, and that's why we tell in the switch, we tell the server that it's active. But at some point, we're going to need a way for the switch to actually tell the door. So we're going to do this. We're going to add an event. I'm going to we've seen ways to do event like this. I'm going to show you another way to do this, which is more like if you know about encapsulation, it's a better way to do events. Those are more private. This is more if like the person that's going to subscribe to you has an instance of the object, so it's been linked in the editor or something. So we're going to see. So we're going to do public delegate void switch changed. Let's go with switch change. It's going to take a switch. So a door switch, and it's going to take a bool is active. Okay, so that's a delegate. Now we're going to go ahead and do an event with that. So it's just an event. It's switch change on switch changed. There we go. So that way, like, yeah, it's public, but it's not static. So you need a reference to a switch to actually subscribe to it. So it's a better pattern than the one we've been doing right here. So right here, whenever the switch is active, here we're gonna go and say on switch change. We're gonna do this to test if it's null, and we're gonna do invoke. We're gonna pass this because we're the switch that's been pressed, and we're gonna pass inactive because that's the new state of the switch. Okay, So since the door here has a reference to that switch, we can simply do a door switch dot on switch change and just subscribe like any other event. So we're going to create a just a on switch changed, and here what we want to do is that if switches dot contains that door switch, so that means that the switch that's been activated belongs to us, which is always going to be the case because we're listening to only the switch. So you know what? I'm going to remove that. In fact, we don't need that. We're just going to say that active switch dot door switch is equal to is active. That's basically it, really. And then what we want to do is we don't want to do switches dot for each again. So for each door switch switch here, we're gonna do let's say here we're gonna check in the dictionary of active switches, and we're gonna say in fact just do if not active switches door switch, the one with the capital letter in the middle. If one of the switches is not active, then we're just going to return. But if it does not return, it means that every switches in our active switches dictionary are true, which means here we can open the door. Open the door. And for that, we just need also to tell the anim controller to set trigger to open door. Now here in Unity, what we're going to do is we're going to go on here. We have our animator. Let's add our network animator. That's going to be that, so that we can take this and put our animator in the network animator, and then we're going to want to add the door script. It's going to do the same. Tell us, your door is network behavior, so you need a network object. So let's say yes to that. So we have this. So for the switches, what we're going to do is I'm going to log this. We're going to put this and put both switches in here. And for the anim controller, we want the network animator. So let's put it here. All right. So this is mostly what we need to do for this. Now let's create a build of the test. A build of the game and test it. So before actually playing it, I actually had to come back and make one last fix. So if you're getting that the switch tries to register with scene play subject, which already contain the same global hash ID, I feel like I think it's because those were prefab, and the network object needs to kind of not be in the prefab. It needs to kind of be added after in the scene, because at least what I did is I removed their network object and I put in a new one, and it kind of fixed the issue. So if you have that bug, just know that this is how you fix it. All right, so now we've built a game, so we're gonna host in this. Oh, this one is not in the right scene, so this is an error that can happen. Let's go back in this scene and start it. So this one here is gonna be the host. So let's wait for that one to pop, and let's go join. So we're gonna join it. Join. There we go. Now, yeah, sometimes it takes times. We're gonna ready up here, and then we're gonna start. Then I'm gonna get that player out of the way. Tab out, make sure that one can join. Here we go. So I'm gonna make that one on that switch. As you can see, the door is still closed on both. And then if I go here, boom, it opens on both sides, and then it doesn't close anymore. So then both player can cross. So yeah, there we go. It's all working. And there it is for our network variable video. In the next video, I'm not sure yet what we're gonna do, but we're gonna continue on this prototype and in this on this multiplayer journey. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You can also join the Discord, which the URL is in the banner. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.